The notification arrived during the most boring session of the Galactic Assembly's quarterly review. Trade Minister Threll of the Vornaki Dominion was half listening to a presentation about mineral extraction quotas when his personal communicator vibrated with an emergency alert. He glanced at the screen and felt his four hearts skip their rhythm. The message bore the seal of the United Earth Federation. Priority classification, absolute. Threll had served in galactic politics for 40 years. He had never seen that classification used before. He opened it and read slowly, certain he was misunderstanding something. The United Earth Federation formally withdraws from the Galactic Assembly effective immediately. All treaties, agreements, and partnerships are hereby terminated. All Earth citizens are recalled to Sol System within 60 standard days. Earth thanks the Assembly for 3 centuries of cooperation. We wish you prosperity. This communication is final. Threll laughed quietly. Humans were known for their dramatic negotiation tactics. This was clearly a ploy to gain leverage in the upcoming resource allocation debates. He forwarded the message to Assembly leadership with a note suggesting they prepare a counteroffer. Within 2 hours the Great Chamber was in chaos. High Chancellor Morvath called for order, but representatives from over 500 species were shouting over each other. The noise was overwhelming. Morvath finally activated the sonic dampeners, forcing silence on the chamber. "Has anyone contacted the human delegation?" she demanded. "Their embassy compound is empty," reported Security Director Koss. His serpentine body coiled with obvious distress. Every human staff member departed overnight. Their ships left no flight plans. "We cannot track where they went." "Contact Earth directly," Morvath ordered. "We have tried," Koss replied. Every communication channel returns an automated response. The message thanks us for our inquiry and states that Earth is not accepting external communications. Nothing more. The chamber erupted again despite the dampeners. Morvath let them argue while she processed what was happening. She had known humans for decades. She had worked beside them, negotiated with them, considered many of them friends. They complained sometimes, certainly. They pushed for better treatment and more representation. But this complete withdrawal made no sense to her. Over the following days, the reality of the situation became clearer and far more disturbing. Humans were not just leaving. They were erasing themselves from galactic society with surgical precision. On the manufacturing world of Kelix Prime, human-owned factories that produced half the galaxy's medical equipment transferred ownership to local buyers at fair market prices. No negotiations, no delays. The transactions were completed within hours. On the research station orbiting Vega 7, human scientists packed their equipment and departed without explanation. They left behind detailed documentation of their work but took every piece of human design technology with them. On the diplomatic hub of Central Station, human mediators who had spent decades building relationships simply said goodbye and walked onto transport ships. Some of their alien colleagues wept. The humans remained polite but offered no explanations. Trade Minister Threll began investigating Earth's economic activity over the past century. What he found made him feel cold despite his species' natural warmth. Earth had been reducing its dependence on galactic imports for over 50 years. They had developed domestic alternatives for every critical resource. Their stockpiles of rare materials had grown steadily while the rest of the galaxy had grown more dependent on human goods. It was methodical. It was deliberate. It was a withdrawal planned across generations. They were preparing for this, Threll told the Emergency Council session. Perhaps for longer than any of us have been alive. This was not an emotional decision. This was a strategy executed with perfect patience. The deadline arrived. The last human transports departed from the final assembly worlds. Not one human citizen remained in galactic space except for a handful who formally renounced their Earth citizenship. And then the borders sealed. A Calaxian merchant convoy was the first to test the situation. They had traded with Earth for decades. Their captain assumed the political situation would not affect long-standing business relationships. The convoy approached Sol System's traditional boundary, the point where visitors would request entry permission. They broadcast standard trading credentials and waited for response. Silence answered them. The captain ordered his ships forward. They had come too far to turn back over political gestures. The moment they crossed the boundary marker, every ship in the convoy lost power simultaneously. Engines went dead. Weapons systems shut down. Life support switched to emergency reserves. The crews were terrified, believing they were under attack. But no attack came. Instead, their ships began moving without any visible force acting upon them. Sensors detected nothing. No tractor beams, no gravity manipulation, nothing their instruments could identify. The ships were simply being relocated by something beyond their understanding. The convoy was deposited precisely 1 kilometer outside the boundary line. Power returned instantly. All systems came back online without a single error or malfunction. The automated message played on every screen. Sol system is closed to external traffic. Thank you for respecting our boundaries. The captain filed his report with shaking hands. The Galactic Assembly read it in stunned silence. Earth had not just closed its borders. Earth had demonstrated that it could control any technology that approached its space. Complete control. Absolute authority. Without weapons, without violence, without even communication. High Chancellor Morveth convened her most trusted advisors in a private chamber. The question on everyone's mind was finally spoken aloud. How long have they been able to do this? Asked Military Commander Voss. His species were warriors who respected strength above all else. His voice held something Morveth had never heard from him before. Fear. Unknown, replied Science Director Telani. But given the sophistication of what they demonstrated, I would estimate their technology has exceeded ours for at least a century. Possibly longer. That is impossible, Voss argued. Humans joined the assembly as a primitive species. They barely had faster-than-light travel. We taught them everything they know. Talani's expression was grim. Commander, I have spent the past week reviewing human scientific contributions to galactic knowledge. What I found disturbs me greatly. She activated a holographic display showing thousands of patent records, research papers, and technological specifications. 43% of all major technological advances in the past 3 centuries have human involvement, she explained. Not as primary inventors in most cases. As collaborators, consultants, or researchers whose earlier work was referenced. They appear in footnotes, in acknowledgement sections, in obscure theoretical papers published years before the practical applications emerged. What are you suggesting? Morveth asked quietly. I am suggesting that we did not teach them anything. They fed us solutions disguised as collaboration. They let us believe we were mentoring a younger species while they were actually guiding our development. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Why would they hide such capabilities? Morveth finally asked. Why pretend to be less than they were? The old historian Corvin spoke from his corner. He was ancient even by galactic standards, old enough to remember when humans first made contact. I met the first human ambassador, he said slowly. A woman named Sarah Chen. She was brilliant and kind and very careful. I asked her once why humans seemed so eager to share their knowledge without demanding much in return. She smiled and said something I have never forgotten. The chamber waited. She said, We have learned that being feared is lonely. We would rather be loved and underestimated than powerful and isolated. I thought it was charming philosophy. Now I understand it was strategy. Morveth stared at the sealed border on her display. Beyond that invisible line, Earth waited in silence. Not threatening. Not demanding. Simply gone. They spent 3 centuries being loved, she realized aloud. Now they have chosen isolation anyway. The question is why? Nobody had an answer. The galaxy would have to find one without human help. And as Morveth dismissed her advisors and sat alone in the darkened chamber, she understood that finding answers had become considerably harder. The teachers had left the classroom. The students were on their own. 3 months after Earth's withdrawal, the Galactic Assembly discovered how thoroughly they had been woven into human design. It began with the hospitals. Chief Medical Officer Yanera of Kelix Prime arrived at her facility to find organized chaos. Every advanced treatment pod was functioning at reduced capacity. Surgeries that should have taken minutes were requiring hours. The artificial intelligence systems that guided complex procedures had reverted to basic protocols. The quantum processors are operating, her technician explained desperately. But the deep learning networks have gone dormant. Everything runs on legacy programming now. Yanera checked the manufacturer stamps on their equipment. Chin Biomedical. Okonkwo Medical Systems. Park Surgical Technologies. Human companies. All of them dissolved when Earth withdrew. The equipment still worked. But the intelligence that made it exceptional had simply stopped responding. Similar reports flooded in from across the galaxy. 40% of advanced medical systems showed degraded performance. Mortality rates for complex procedures began climbing. Diseases that had been easily treated became dangerous again. The agricultural networks followed. Worlds that had relied on human-designed optimization systems watched their crop yields fall by 20% in a single growing season. The automated farming equipment functioned, but the predictive algorithms that maximize production no longer updated. Weather patterns changed, soil conditions shifted, and the systems could not adapt. Food shortages appeared on planets that had not known hunger in generations. The communication networks began fragmenting next. The protocol that allowed different species technologies to interface seamlessly had been developed by human engineers a century ago. It was universal, invisible, and essential. Everyone used it without thinking about where it came from. Now messages were being lost. Data transfers failed randomly. Ships occasionally could not communicate with stations using different technological bases. The seamless galactic network was developing cracks. Military Commander Voss proposed what many were thinking quietly. "We must consider a direct approach," he told the Emergency Council. "Earth cannot be allowed to hold the galaxy hostage through technological dependence. We should send a fleet to Sol System and demand negotiations." "You saw what happened to the merchant convoy," Science Director Telani reminded him. "They took control of those ships instantly and completely." "Merchant vessels," Voss dismissed. "Not military craft with hardened systems and trained crews. Our warriors will not be turned aside so easily." High Chancellor Morvith did not approve the operation. But she did not forbid it either. Voss assembled a fleet of 200 warships representing 12 different species. The finest vessels in galactic space, crewed by the most experienced officers. They approached Sol System in attack formation. The automated warning played as they crossed the boundary. "Sol System is closed to external traffic. Thank you for respecting our boundaries." Voss ordered his fleet forward. Every ship lost power simultaneously. Not reduced power. Not degraded systems. Complete shutdown. 200 warships became drifting metal coffins in an instant. Emergency life support activated on battery reserves. Crews scrambled to manual controls that did not respond. Communications between ships failed completely. Each vessel was isolated, helpless, and silent. Then the fleet began moving. Voss watched his tactical display show his ships being rearranged like toys in a child's hand. The formation dissolved. Vessels were separated and repositioned. His flagship was rotated slowly until his viewports faced back toward galactic space. Power returned. Every ship was fully functional. Not a single system showed damage. But they had been moved 15 light-minutes backward from Earth's boundary, arranged in a perfect line pointing away from Sol System. The message appeared on every screen. "Please do not return. We do not wish to harm you. But we will not permit entry. This is our final warning." Voss stared at the words for a long time. His species had been warriors for 10,000 years. They had never encountered an enemy they could not fight. They had also never encountered an enemy who could defeat them without firing a single weapon. His report to the assembly was brief. "Earth's defensive capabilities exceed anything in our experience. Military options are not viable. I recommend alternative approaches." The assembly had no alternative approaches. While the council debated uselessly, conflicts began erupting across the galaxy. The Thornian Collective and the Vex Confederation had disputed the same border region for centuries. Human diplomats had maintained a fragile peace through endless patience and creative compromises. Those diplomats were gone now. The old hatreds resurfaced within months. Ships began shooting at each other over systems that neither side truly needed but both refused to abandon. The Calaxian Federation fractured into 17 separate states when their central government collapsed. Human economic advisors had quietly held the fractious alliance together for decades. Without their guidance, regional powers pursued their own interests. Civil war followed. 3 other major conflicts ignited within the same quarter. Dozens of smaller disputes turned violent. The peacekeeping forces that should have responded were paralyzed by internal disagreements and failing communications. Science Director Telani continued her research into human contributions to galactic technology. What she found grew more disturbing with each discovery. The shield systems that protected starships had been invented by a Calaxian engineer named Voras. He had won the Assembly's highest scientific honor. But Telani found his original research notes referenced collaboration with a human theorist named Dr. James Okonkwo. Okonkwo had published the fundamental physics years earlier in an obscure journal. His paper had been written as abstract theory, not practical application. The food synthesizers that had ended hunger on hundreds of worlds came from similar origins. A human agricultural scientist had solved the key biochemical problems and published them freely. Another species engineer had built the practical device and received the credit. The faster-than-light communication arrays. The medical scanners. The power generation systems. The artificial intelligence frameworks. Every major technology that defined galactic civilization had human fingerprints somewhere in its development. They gave it away, Telani told Morvith in a private meeting. They solved the hardest problems and let others take the glory. They hid their capabilities behind collaboration and modesty. For 300 years. Why? Morvith asked. The question haunted her constantly now. I do not know. But I believe they never needed us. We needed them. We just did not realize it. Morvith accessed the final transmission from Earth. She had watched it dozens of times, searching for clues she might have missed. Director Chen's face appeared on screen. Calm. Neutral. Almost sad. This is not punishment. This is not revenge. We simply choose a different path now. A different path, Morvith murmured. What path? Where are they going that they cannot take us? Corvin the historian had a theory. He shared it with Morvith late one night when neither of them could sleep. Humans live very short lives compared to most species, he observed. Perhaps 80 or 90 years naturally. Yet they think in very long terms. Generations. Centuries. They plant trees whose shade they will never enjoy. Your point? They spent 300 years building something. Not technology. Not wealth. Trust. They made themselves essential while appearing harmless. They solved problems while seeming to learn. They became the foundation that the entire galaxy rested upon. And then they removed that foundation. Yes, but not to destroy us. Corvin's ancient eyes were thoughtful. Humans do not think like conquerors. They think like gardeners. They planted seeds across the galaxy for 3 centuries. Now they have stepped back to see what grows. That is either profound or terrifying. Perhaps both. Morvith looked at the sealed border on her display. Beyond it, Earth waited in silence. Patient. Watching. Judging. The galaxy had been tested before. Wars and plagues and cosmic disasters. They had survived because they worked together, shared knowledge, supported each other. Now they would face their greatest test. Could they survive without the species that had quietly held everything together? Morvith did not know the answer. But she understood that humans had given the galaxy a gift wrapped in crisis. The gift of learning to stand alone. Whether the galaxy would accept that gift or collapse trying remained to be seen. The silence from Earth continued. And the stars watched to see what would happen next. The end.